Welcome, juniors, to part 2 of your junior lessons. Today, we are going to be going over a lot of really helpful information for you, talking about things to know for senior year and graduation, the whole application process and what you should be doing over the summer to be prepared for college applications in the fall, and a lot of information about COVID-19 and how that is going to impact your particular class of 2021 for the application process next year. So for the senior year schedule, by now, you all met with your counselor back in February to schedule classes for senior year. At this point, if you need to make a change to your schedule, it will be based on space availability. So if you want to change from physics AP to environmental science AP, you can email your counselor by June 10th. And if there is space available, we can make that change. If after June 10th, you want to make a change to your schedule, counselors do not work over the summer, so you will need to wait until schedule change day in late August. We don't know what schedule change day will look like at this point, whether we'll be able to do it in person or we will be having it virtually, so more information to come on that. If you are taking a summer class this summer, if you signed up through our PVPSS summer school program, you are good to go. You just need to let your counselor know if you are taking a class through them, if you did not let them know that when you met for scheduling. If you are going to be taking a summer class outside of the PV school district, this must be pre-approved by your counselor by May 29th. So if you are planning on signing up for a class, you need to contact your counselor as soon as possible to make sure you have all of the necessary documentation and approval before signing up for that class. For those that have received D or F grades on their transcript over the last 3 years, that's something you will want to talk to your counselor about if you have not already, as this will be your last summer to make up those Ds and F grades for graduation or for the four-year college eligibility. In terms of high school graduation, you do need 220 credits to graduate. We require certain subject requirements that you pass with a D, or for this current semester, you could opt to take a credit for that D. So as long as you get a D or a credit, you do pass and get the credit for that class. But if you received an F and it's a subject requirement, you would need to retake that. On your transcript, we calculate in 6 different GPAs, which tends to get very confusing. But just a rule of thumb, if you're applying to private and out-of-state colleges, most of the time they're going to be looking at your academic 9 through 12 weighted and non-weighted classes. And if you're going to be applying to UC and Cal States, they only calculate grades based on 10th and 11th grade into their GPA calculation. So our best estimate of what your UC or Cal State GPA is looking like would be your academic 10 through 12 weighted and non-weighted GPA. In August, we will be mailing home graduation checks, which would include a transcript, so you can see where you stand in terms of your GPA and your course requirements for graduation. So we will be doing that in the fall. And of course, your counselor will check and triple check to make sure you're on track for graduation as well. This chart you've seen multiple times by this point, but this breaks it down for you in terms of what we require for graduation at PV High School versus what is required depending on what colleges you're looking at. So this is the Cal States, the UCs and what they're requiring and recommending, and then the last column for your highly selective colleges, what they are looking to see that you took in high school. So based on where you're planning on applying, this may change what you decide to take senior year. And again, you need to email your counselor before June 10th if you do need to make any changes. The college application process, and in particular things that we would recommend you do this summer if you're going to be applying to four-year colleges. The process is starting with a lot of self-reflection, what your priorities are, what your goals are, what you're looking for in your college experience. And from that, a lot of research. The good news is you don't have a lot of activities on your agenda this summer, so you're gonna have plenty of time to do research. At the last junior lesson in January, we discussed your personal priorities, coming up with a plan for post-secondary education. We had you do an assessment and a reflection and come up with a potential list of colleges based on those priorities. So now we want you to start narrowing down that list, because applying to 25 to 30 colleges is really overwhelming and stressful. And so we don't recommend applying to more than 15 colleges. So now is the time to start narrowing down your list. By the end of the summer, the goal would be that you have your final list ready to go of 8 to 15 schools. So at that lesson in January, we went over a lot of different tools for you to use when you're researching colleges. I'll go over a few, review again some of the great tools on Naviance. College Board has a great search tool on their website. The college visits in the CCC hopefully will continue to take place in the fall of next year. I'll talk about that in another slide. Right now, almost every college across the US is offering virtual college visits, webinars, Q&A sessions. It's a really great time for you to take advantage of all of those virtual opportunities at the colleges that you're interested in. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, it's important to have family input and start talking to your family about what is the priority for you and for your family as well. We've had a lot of students struggle to get onto their Naviance account lately. So we wanted to make sure that you understood that you can sign on to Naviance using your single sign-on portal. So what you would do to do this is you would go to the district website, pvpusd.net, click on the Students and Family tab, and then click on the Student Portal tab. And this is going to take you to a screen where it's going to ask you to put in your PVPUSD email, which most of you have been using on a daily basis now that we're learning online. So you put in your student ID number at pvpusd.net and your password, and it's going to take you to a screen that looks like this with all of the different tiles on it. You're going to select the Naviance tile, and boom, you're going to be right onto your Naviance account, and you can start using all of the great tools on there. So one thing we discussed with you before, the scattergrams, a great virtual tool to use to kind of help you determine visually what your chances are of getting into a particular college. So based on your GPA, and if you've inputted your test scores, it will plot you on this graph so you can see what your chances are at various colleges. One of our favorite features is Supermatch in Naviance, especially if you're just starting this process. Once you know what your priorities are and what you're looking for, you can start plugging in those priorities and features. And as you do that, it'll start matching or developing a list of colleges that meet all of that criteria that you're looking for. So a great place to start that search if you haven't already started. Another cool feature is the college match feature. So this is basically just taking your GPA and if you inputted what your test scores are and matching you with colleges that are looking for students like you based on your academics. Lastly, you can also look at the PV High College acceptance list. Each year, the College and Career Center puts together the list of where students have been accepted by class. So you can click on this link and see all of the wonderful places that our seniors from the class of 2019 were admitted to and attending. So it gives you an idea of places where you would have that instant connection of PV High alumni. And then just so you're aware, on this presentation, there are a lot of hyperlinks for you to click on. Since this is a Zoom recording, you're not going to be able to click on this particular Zoom recorded presentation on the links here, but we have posted a PDF version of this presentation under the on our PV High website under the counseling section under juniors. So go ahead and click on that PDF version, and all of the hyperlinks are active there so that you can click and get all of the information. The Senior College Handbook the College and Career Center puts together each year is a really great resource helping you with the application process and all of the questions that you have, as well as information that can help you once you've been admitted to schools and you're trying to make a determination where to go. So if you click on here, this was for the fall 2019. The current one is being updated since there's a lot of new information pertaining to the application process for your current class, but a lot of really helpful information on here. So the one for your class will be available for you by the end of June on the College and Career Center webpage. So look out for that. It would be very helpful for you. Mrs. Lewis, the director of the College and Career Center, also recommends the guide created by Fair Opportunity Project. Let me see if I can pull that link up so you can see what that looks like. So a lot of good resources on here, videos, interactive links that can help you in terms of thinking about college, finding the right fit, what you need to know for standardized tests, tips for completing the application and writing your essays, and more good information on that website as well. Okay. Okay, moving on. So college visits in the CCC. Right now it's too early to tell what that's going to look like for the fall of 2020. But we want you to know that our College and Career Center is working and connecting daily with all of those college reps and making sure that you as a class of 2021 are going to have the best options for connecting with them in the fall. So whether that be in person or virtually, we will make sure you have that opportunity. We do want to stress that since you're no longer able to visit college campuses, it's really important for you to take advantage of those virtual opportunities to connect with the college reps. That helps prove your demonstrated interest to colleges. And that's something that they definitely look at when they're reviewing your application to see if you've made that connection and that you really do have a demonstrated interest in attending their college. I'm going to pass it over to Mrs. Lichter now to talk about college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won.
Yes, so as you guys have heard us say before many times in the counseling office, college is a match to be made. And as Mrs. McHugh just talked about all of the different ways you can research and figure out, and if you reflect on the presentation that we did with you in January and what you listed there as your priorities, this is the time to really think and look back at what those things were. And that is going to help you determine what the best match is for you. So some things to be doing this summer while you finalize your list. Research, reflection on everything is going to be huge. Having your good college list finalized and ready by the time we're back at school in August. Getting organized, and I'll review with you some ways for you to do that. And then you can actually start prepping the applications, those personal statements, working on those drafts and having that ready to go, and brainstorming and writing a few drafts so that there's less for you to do in the fall. So what is a good college list? If you remember and reflect back to the presentation that we did in January, we did talk about those things that you should be thinking about, and you created a larger list. So now is the time to look at that list and get it to a reasonable number of schools, which we recommend is about 8 to 15 schools. And they should be focused applications for the places that are a good fit for you with what you mentioned and what you've determined both on your own and with your family as are important priorities for you in a college. It should have a couple of likely schools, but no more than a third of the schools on this list should be reached schools. So when we talk about schools being likely and reached schools, we're looking at your test scores, your GPAs, and the kind of applicant that you are compared to the kind of applicants that they've accepted into that school in the past and how you fall on that list from a data perspective. But keep in mind, some schools are going to be reach schools for everybody. Their admit rate is very, very tiny. And so if that is your list completely, that is going to be very difficult. So that is why we like to have a mixture of schools on that list that kind of hit those different features of being likely and reach schools. When you go through all the schools on this list, every single college should meet your priorities for post-secondary plans. Every school should make you happy and really and truly, especially in light of everything that's going on right now, it needs to account for your family's particular financial situation. So now is the time to start having those conversations, if you haven't already, with your parents, and figure out how you will financially pay for every single one of the schools that you are planning to apply to. You need to go through school by school and make sure that you've hit all of those categories. So organization is going to be a huge part of this process for you. You will realize once you start compiling your list that there is a lot to keep track of in this process. And so in order to make sure that you're not missing deadlines and you're not missing communication, you really will need to have an organizational system that helps you keep track of this. We recommend getting a binder or some kind of file folder and having like a divider for each college that you're applying to. But if there's a different system that works best for you, that's fine as well. But the important thing is that you have a system to keep you organized and keeping track of that. In the next few slides, I'm going to go over some questions that you should be asking yourself to help you keep track of everything that you need in this process. But this will be your best friend to make sure that this application process is not super stressful and overwhelming. This is your future, so we want you to take ownership of this process and keeping track of these deadlines and organization. So some questions to help you with this. You will need to figure out what the application portal is for that school. How are you applying? Are you applying via Common App, Coalition App? Is it a UC school and you're using the UC app? Cal State? Are you applying directly through the institution? You need to go through every single college on your list and keep track of how you're applying to each and every one of these schools. The next thing you'll want to determine is, do you need personal statements or essays to apply to this college? If you do, how many are required? Do you need to submit standardized tests? So SAT, ACT, SAT subject tests, or is this school now one that has come out with a test optional policy? You will also need to know if this school needs us as counselors to send documents. So transcripts, secondary school reports, are these things that they need in documents right away? Or are these pieces of information that you provide yourself and self-disclose? This is going to be different for each college. Something else to note about the transcripts, most schools who require documents sent in on your behalf, they're going to need all transcripts sent to them. Meaning, if you've taken anything outside of PVPUSD, whether it's through an online school, community college, you will also need to contact those specific schools, and they also need to send your documents to the college that you're applying to. Even though these classes might be on your PV transcript, colleges are going to want to see the original transcript from every single school that you've attended, and summer includes attending a school. So you will need to keep track of this as well. But then you'll also need to keep in mind that schools like UCs and Cal States, they require self-reporting. So you'll just need an updated transcript to fill out your application. You won't need to send things. So you do need to make note of what each and every school is requiring of you in terms of sending in documents right away. You'll also need to pay attention to whether or not it's a school that requires letter of recommendation. If they do, you'll need to pay attention to who they want those letters from. Do they want it from a teacher? And if they do, how many teachers are they requesting? Do they want it from a counselor? Do they accept letters from non-school personnel? This is something that colleges will tell you So you will, again, need to visit this college's website and see what it is that they're requiring from the application. Oftentimes, when you do need a teacher letter of rec, it'll be from your junior year teacher. So think of your teachers that you have currently. These will likely be the people that you will be asking for a letter from. And so you will want to keep this in the back of your mind that ideally it's from junior year teachers and not freshmen and sophomore teachers. The last thing that you'll want to also keep track of in your organizational system is when is the application due. This is going to depend on the type of deadlines that colleges offer. Again, this is going to be specific college by college. There are different deadline options though. The first is rolling applications. So this could mean that an institution reviews the applications as you complete them. So they have an opening deadline when you can start submitting your applications. You send it in, and you'll get a decision throughout the cycle. So oftentimes if you're able to apply on the earlier end and there aren't as many applications in yet, you might be able to get a decision really quickly. The decisions are not all given at the exact same time. Regular decision is when you submit an application by that college's specified date, and then you receive a decision within a stated period of time. So for instance, like UCs, you will apply in the month of November, and then you will receive a response in the spring. And that is just their stated policy. There are no other deadlines, but some schools will offer different types of deadlines for you. Early action might be something that you come across with certain colleges. This is when you apply early to a school of preference, and then you receive a decision in advance of the regular decision response date. So you'll receive a decision earlier. You are not obligated to accept the offer of admission if you get one through early action, but it does mean that you will get an answer early. Something to note though about early action is if you decide to use that deadline and submit early action, you'll want to make sure that you're a really, really strong applicant for that school, as it can be competitive. Restrictive early action. This is when you send in an application to a school of preference and you also receive a decision early, so like the early action. However, the difference is in restrictive early action, there are restrictions placed on you as to how many schools you can apply to early. Again, you are not obligated to accept this offer, but you do need to be careful because they do have restrictions on how many places you can apply to early. The final way you can apply is early decision. This decision is binding. So you are applying to a first choice school. This needs to be the school that you are dying and dreaming of going to, and nothing at all is going to change your mind about wanting to go to this school, because if you are admitted under early decision, you have to enroll. You will need to check with the particular school that you're applying early decision through and see what their specific policies are for the early decision agreement, because there is a binding agreement that you will have to sign, your counselor will have to sign, your parent will have to sign. So it is acknowledging that you understand that if you are admitted, you're attending this school. So before you sign that, you will need to be extra certain that you do want to attend this school, as there are very, very few ways of getting out of this contract. So if you're even just a little bit hesitant about applying this way, then early decision would not be our recommendation for how you apply to this college. It is super important that you realize that so much of the application process is done via email, especially now as things are moving to being virtual. It is going to be very, very important that you have an appropriate email address set up. When you apply to colleges, you are including your email. This is how they communicate with you. So if you don't have an appropriate or professional sounding personal email address set up yet, you will want to make one and use this same one for all of your college applications. It is hugely important that you check this on a regular basis. So many kids have missed important messages about their applications or about something pertaining to the admissions process because they're not checking their email daily. So this will be something that you really, really want to make sure that you do. If you need to set in a reminder on your phone in some way to make sure you do that, then that's what you need to do, because this is how they are communicating to you. They are not communicating to your parents or to us. They are going to use the email that you put on your college applications. If you are applying to schools through Common App, this video here shows you how to create your Common App account. So again, you will need to look at the presentation.
Let's take a look at how you can create a first-year Common App account. To create a first-year Common App account, use the Create Account button on commonapp.org. First, you're asked what kind of account you want to create. You can use the information icon to learn more about each type of account. For this video, we're going to create a first-year student account. First, you'll enter your email address and choose a password. Make sure to choose an email you check often. This email is how Common App and colleges you're applying to will get in touch with you. You'll also use this email to log into your account each time. Next, you'll enter your name, phone number, and date of birth. Be sure to use your legal name as it appears on official documents. This will help colleges to match documents with the correct applicant. Then, use the Add Address button to enter your address. First, select the country, and then type in your address. Select your address from the results given. If you don't see your address from the list, you can enter the correct information manually. Next, you're asked if you are currently based in a European Union country and when you plan to start college. Finally, you'll review and affirm some statements in the Common App privacy policy. Please take some time to carefully read and check the affirmation before continuing. When you're ready, use the Create Account button to complete the process. And that's it. Now that you understand how to create a Common App account, you're ready to get started.
So as I was saying earlier, if you remember, Mrs. McHugh mentioned that in this Zoom recorded presentation, you aren't able to click on that link to see that video. So you'll need to access our presentation through the PVI website that's posted there. And that way you can click on the link and see this video if you need a reminder and some help as to how to set up your Common App account. An important note, if you are going to be setting up your Common App accounts, you'll notice when you set this up and go through, there will be a section that's going to ask you to waive your FERPA rights. When you do this, you are allowing your counselor to send documents to schools on your behalf. So it is important that you click yes to waiving your rights, as this can't be changed after. So even if you don't end up filling out your whole Common App application at one time, this is something that you'll want to do, as it is really, really difficult to change after the fact. This is important because if you waive your rights, your counselor and teachers that you've asked for letters of rec can write honest and comprehensive letters of rec for you, which is looked at as more favorable by colleges. So just so you know, even if you do not waive your rights, you will still not be able to see the letters of rec until you graduate from college. So once you've created a Common App account, you can view all of the essay prompts for the class of 2021. So this summer is a really great time to start getting working on these. You will not need to answer all of the questions, so you will need to check with the specific colleges that you're applying to, how many responses they require if they're a Common App school. Some schools will have something called supplemental essays. So these are school-specific questions just for that school's application. So you will want to make sure that you check the requirements to know if you need to answer any of those additional supplemental questions. After August 1st, schools will update their school portion of the Common App, and that's going to include the supplemental questions. But you can get started on the drafts, and you can get started on working on those, even if you're not going to submit for a while. Some important things to note when you're writing these personal statements: colleges want to hear your voice, the voice of a 17, 18-year-old. They don't want to hear someone else's voice reflected, because they can tell. This is your time to shine and show them your authentic self. And this is going to be so much more important than ever before. They really are going to be looking at these personal statements closely to get a sense of who you are. The point of these is for your personality to shine through. They want to know more about you as a person, more than they can tell from your transcript and from other data points on your application. This is the time for them to hear about you. Another thing that might sound a little obvious, but is the biggest thing that we see when students are writing their personal statements or answering these supplemental questions, is they're not answering the question. It sometimes helps to read these essays out loud, or have someone who has never seen your essay read it before, and make sure it's super clear that you are answering all the different parts of the question that they're asking. Something to note, there will be a Common App COVID-19 question for your class, the class of 2021. This is your opportunity in this question to discuss if COVID impacted you, and specifically how it did in this semester and summer. This is the best place to address any of that, not in the other essay questions that you might be writing. The UCs have their own application that is separate to the Common App. For all UC schools, the 9 campuses, there is one application. The filing period to submit this application is November 1st through the 30th. It does require personal insight questions. So those are like shorter essays. The SAT or ACT is not required for the class of 2021. It is optional. So you can determine if this is something that you feel like you want to submit. If your score is competitive and feel like it will help you, you can choose to send that in, but it is not a requirement for the class of 2021. There are no letters of rec required unless a specific campus reaches out to you and asks for this. So this means that if they do not ask you specifically for this, you do not need to ask. They also do not require transcripts sent from us. You will need to self-report your grades. Again, campuses can request on their own to have a transcript sent. They will communicate that to you. So this is another one of the reasons why it's super important that you check that email for portal updates, because that is how they will let you know that they would like this information. But when you're first applying in November, you do not need to pay or send a transcript. You will just need an updated transcript with you to make sure that you're self-reporting correctly, because they will check this at the end once you've accepted. There is a $70 fee per campus. So as mentioned, part of the UC application is answering those personal insight questions. There are 8 questions that you can choose from, and you need to choose 4. They're about 350 words max is what they want, so they are a little bit shorter. And again, it's intended to get to know you as an applicant more and provide a more holistic view of you. You will want to make sure that you take advantage of this and address different things in each of those questions. You don't want to be repeating the same thing that you've answered in a different insight question. They want to get to know you in a well-rounded, well-faceted way. So you'll want to really think and brainstorm before you approach this on what you want to cover in those personal insight questions. There's a great worksheet that we've included here to help you with this brainstorming process in answering those insight questions. Cal State schools, of which there are 23, they have their own separate application. So if you are applying to schools that are part of that, that application is going to be different to the UCs, different to the Common App. The applications are online. The filing period is a little bit earlier than the UCs. It's October 1st is when you can start filing with a deadline of November 30th. Something really important to note that applies to all schools. Please make sure that you are getting ahead of when you are filing and sending in your applications. If you are trying at the last minute to send in your applications on the deadline for November 30th, there is a higher chance that there's going to be some kind of system overload and error messages, and there might be technical difficulties as a result of all the students around the country who are trying to file at the same time. And if you miss the deadline, you miss the deadline. So in order to kind of create a buffer for yourself in case of these kind of technical difficulties or errors that you might experience, you'll want to give yourself enough chance to still submit it. So try and submit it for the first time on the earlier end so that you create a little buffer for yourself and it's a less stressful time for you. Standardized tests are also not required for the class of 2021. Again, that is optional. The Cal State application does not have an essay, does not require subject tests, letters of rec, transcripts. Again, you are going to be self-reporting those grades. So unless a college specifically reaches out to you to ask for a piece of documentation, you do not need to send that. With the exception of Cal Poly SLO, they don't even ask your extracurricular activities to be listed. So it is a pretty easy application to kind of get out of the way. It'd be a good one to start and feel good about that you've sent in an application and check it off the list. It is a $55 fee per campus to apply to Cal State's. You will also want to note that the Cal State schools, the individual campuses, as well as certain majors within those schools are impacted, which means it can be more difficult and more competitive to get in if you're applying as that specific major. So you can view this on their website so that it's something that you're aware of in advance of sending in your application. They use something called the eligibility index to determine admission. It's a mathematical formula that they create, and they determine what that index is for each school. Another really fantastic option is attending community college right after high school. So we've listed the websites for a few, for El Camino, Harbor, Santa Monica. These are by no means the only community colleges that are available to you. These tend to be the really popular ones that our students attend, but we do also have students attend other community colleges as well. So we don't want you to feel limited to these. You do not need test scores. You do not need the SAT or ACT in order to attend community college. They do not require any kind of personal statements or insight questions. They don't require letters of rec. But if you are wanting to apply through the honors transfer program, they do have qualifications. There's a separate application for this, and they have a different GPA requirement. So for El Camino, you do need a minimum of 3.1 GPA. For Harbor and Santa Monica, it's at 3.0. Something really great to note and a really, really great option, there is something called the South Bay Promise. This is a special application that's due in April, so it's due a little bit earlier, but allows you as a South Bay high school student to get some benefits, which include 30 units of college completely, totally paid for, priority registration, laptop loans, and just some really, really great benefits by applying by this deadline. Community colleges have something called articulation agreements, and that's for transferring to a four-year school. So what that means is you would take the first 2 years, you would earn your associate's degree, you would take those gen ed requirements at the community college, and then work with a transfer counselor at the community college that you attend to be able to apply as a transfer student to four-year colleges. The application is filled out in January. In previous years, we've had community college reps from these local schools come to PB High to help with this registration process. I'm not sure this far in advance what that's going to look like for next year, but do keep that in the back of your mind and do pay attention to any announcements, because that can be a really great time to get any questions answered that you might have when you're filling out that application. So now I will be handing over the rest of the presentation to Mrs. Nelson to discuss the process for letters of rec.
Hello, junior class. We're going to go through and talk a little bit about letters of recommendation and also what the impact is to the class of 2021 with COVID-19. Starting with letters of recommendation, if you've determined that you are going to need these through your organization process, we want to let you know that now is a good time to think about contacting your teachers to get in touch with them if you are going to need teacher letters of rec. Different schools require different forms of letters of recommendation, and it's very important that you give them exactly what they're asking for. So you want to be sure that you're checking with the admissions websites for the colleges that are on your list to be sure that you know what types of letters they're asking for. For classes where you feel that you have grown as a student or you have a good connection with the teacher, these would be great classes for you to think about asking that teacher to write you a letter. The teacher letter of recommendation is really about who you are inside a classroom, what kind of thinker you are, what kind of learner you are, what kind of classmate and peer you are. So think about your experiences and who you think would have the most to say about how you've grown maybe as a student while you've been in high school. I also really want to point out that the letter of rec is a lot about your character and your character as a student. Right now, during this COVID-19 period, your character as a student is really something that your teachers should be able to speak positively about. So think about how you're reacting to your classes. Are you attending Zoom sessions? This is really important and definitely part of what makes you a great fit for a college campus. As I mentioned earlier, you might want to reach out to some of your teachers this year and ask them if they would be willing to write you a letter for your college application process. Some teachers do get really busy and they do get a lot of requests. So you might want to shoot them an email and ask them if they would be willing to do that for you in the fall. We also want to remind you that teachers do this on their own time. This is not part of their job. This is something that they do for you out of the goodness of their heart. So please be gracious, please be thankful, and most importantly, please be organized so that you can make this as easy for them as possible. If you'll notice at the bottom of the slide, it says click here for the teacher letter of recommendation questionnaire. The teachers have a questionnaire that they like to ask students to fill out to help them in formulating your letter of rec. So you can get an idea of the types of questions that they're asking you, or maybe types of things that you want to provide information for them on about their class and what they could write about to your colleges and universities. The other type of letter of recommendation is the counselor letter of recommendation. So if you are applying to a school that requires a counselor letter of recommendation, you are going to alert your counselor to this in the fall. There's no need to ask us early like you need to ask your teachers. We are going to be going over the counselor letter of rec packet with you in excruciating detail in September. So I promise you, you will get all the information that you need to know about how you go about asking your counselor for a letter and submitting the documents that might be required to your colleges. There is something you can do this summer, though, to get a little bit ahead. If you are going to be asking your counselor to write you a letter of recommendation, we do require that you fill out the counselor letter of recommendation questionnaire. It is a bit lengthy, and this is something that you could get started working on this summer. We've really found that the more that students put into this, obviously the more information we have about you to write about. The counselor letter of recommendation is really about who you are in general as a person. Maybe it's about some opportunities that you've had, or maybe it's about some challenges that you've had. So it's more than just who you are specifically in the classroom. It's a little bit more general about who you are, as a member of the Seeking community. So in order to access this letter of rec questionnaire, you would go onto your Naviance account. You would click on the About Me tab. Then you'd click on the tab that says My Stuff, and then it will be there under the heading that says My Surveys. A great thing to get started on this summer. Also, I should mention with the letter of rec questionnaire, we really want it to be your voice. So don't worry about making it super formal, or it doesn't have to be the best English essay you've ever written. We're really interested in hearing from you in an authentic way. So in the fall of your senior year, we're going to have our senior guidance lesson where we go over in detail the application process and, like I mentioned, the counselor letter of rec packet. We are going to give you extremely detailed directions on how we want you to submit your documents to us, how you're going to request those letters of recommendation on Naviance, and how we're going to get all of the things that you need from PV High School to your colleges and universities. Please, please know that this information is coming. Sometimes we get kids that get really anxious and they want to get the ball rolling in August. And we know that there's a little anxiety there, but please wait until you have this information from us at this senior guidance lesson, because it will all make a lot more sense how this whole process unfolds once we're back together in the fall. So the main message is that if you use your summer wisely to prepare with the steps that we've outlined above, this process for you is going to be a breeze. If you wait and start to do your research in the fall and start to think about all the things that we have outlined already, this is going to be a very stressful time. So please use your summer to get ahead. We want to address COVID-19 and, of course, its impact on the class of 2021. Starting with standardized testing. So the SAT College Board has outlined some important changes. More than anything, it's just important for you to be checking with College Board on their website to see what is changing. The information is unfolding faster than anyone can keep up. So please be checking on the College Board website for the most up-to-date and current information. College Board has said that they are still going to offer the SAT test for the fall. They've added a new test date of 9/26. They have not indicated whether the testing is going to be done in person or at home, via a remote proctor, for example. That all of that information is TBD at this point. So you can see the dates that College Board has outlined for planned testing. If students have already registered for a test, or you are, of course, in the class of 2021, you do get priority registration. And the registration period, I believe, is now open on the College Board website. So please go to the website for more information about how they are rolling out the SAT for the summer and fall of 2020. The ACT has also outlined that they are going to be providing some changes. The June 13th test and July 18th test dates are still scheduled. However, they have recently released that they are potentially closing certain test sites. So please look at the ACT website for that information. They had already planned on doing a computer-based test and single section retest for the fall of 2021. So that is helpful in rolling out this new testing format. And they are also looking at more test dates if needed and if necessary. So again, checking the ACT website for new and current information as it rolls out and as we progress through the summer. Definitely things have changed in terms of testing requirements for the class of 2021 in relation to COVID-19. So colleges and universities are really actively changing their requirements and matrix. Again, this is all rolling out very quickly as well. Many institutions are looking at a one-year temporary test optional situation for the class of 2021, and you can see some of the schools that are listed there as being test optional for your specific class of 2021. There are other institutions that are using this to kind of reevaluate what the situation is for standardized testing and how they're using it in their admissions process. So some schools are looking at using this as a pilot program to reevaluate in 2 to 3 years if they're going to move away from standardized testing. And they are going to be test optional for a number of years, while other schools are following a permanent test optional policy with permanent status beginning in 2025. Again, very important that you know that list of schools that you're applying to so that you can start to research all these different details about how your class specifically is impacted by COVID-19 and what the testing requirements are. The big information that came out on May 21st was the UC's decision on the SAT and the ACT. So for the class of 2021 and 2022, campuses will have the option to use the ACT or SAT test score in selection consideration if a student chooses to submit them. So again, if a student chooses to submit them, the campus will use the score if they would like to. Beginning in the fall of 2023 and going on, campuses will not consider test scores for admission selection at all. So things are definitely changing within the University of California. What you need to know is that the UC is test optional for your class for the application filing period for next year. What I do really want to stress about this, though, is that because campuses are moving towards a test optional policy for the class of 2021, it really means that everything else becomes really very important. The good news is that they're looking at a more holistic approach of evaluating your application. But that means that everything really needs to reflect an accurate picture of who you are. So finishing those grades strong this year, really taking some time to do very insightful personal statements, your letters of recommendation, making sure that you have those from the appropriate teachers and counselor if needed. And then also looking at what your extracurriculars are. We want to stress that language is important here too. So if the school is not test optional, and they have not indicated that, then that means that they still are going to require that you take the ACT or SAT and send the score. If a school indicates that they prefer that you take the test, that prefer should be very loud and signal that you probably still need to get them an ACT or SAT score. Some merit-based scholarships that are very large for some universities still will require a test score. So again, knowing the schools that you're applying to be able to do that research on if they will require it or not is very, very important. Again, please remember this is a constant changing process. So we cannot emphasize enough the importance to do your research and checking with the schools that you do have on your list for updates regularly. In terms of grading with COVID-19, colleges are going to be informed of the PVP USD no harm grading policy. Our school puts forth a school profile every year, and the school profile for your class will include what has happened during the COVID-19 period in regards to grading. No harm grading indicates that your final grade cannot be lower than your third quarter grade that you had, but that means that you can still improve your grade. So keep going, keep attending those Zoom classes. It's very important, as I mentioned earlier. It shows a lot of character on your part, especially when asking teachers for letters of rec. But also, it's very important because this material is still material that you are going to be expected to know, especially in math and foreign language where things build year after year. PVP USD is also offering a letter grade versus a pass credit, no credit option. So you can either stick with your letter grade that you have earned, and that will be computed into your GPA just as normal. For getting a grade A through C, you could choose to take a pass for the class, and that grade then is not calculated into your GPA. If you are getting a D, you can choose to take credit for a class. Credit is different than a pass. A pass is a C or higher. Credit is a D or higher. This also will not be calculated into your GPA. However, if you are planning on going to a four-year college and you choose a credit option, you must think about retaking this class for college admissions as an eligibility requirement, as colleges only accept grades that are C or higher. So that would be something you would be looking at in summer school to do as a retake class. If you choose no credit for an F grade, again, it will not be calculated into your GPA. If the class is a graduation requirement, of course, you are going to need to retake this class in the summer, so something like English or US history. And if you are planning on going to a four-year school and you do take no credit for a class, then that's a class that you would also want to think about retaking over the summer for a passing grade of A through C. Something to think about right now are your extracurricular considerations. Colleges know that your extracurriculars have been canceled or limited, and many of you had really exciting summer plans to add to your resumes. They understand that those things obviously can't happen, but what they do want to see is what you did do with your time when you were here at home. So did you try to engage with your community? Did you try to learn something new, maybe for enrichment or for credit? Maybe your family was really struggling with COVID-19 and you had to help out with your family, with your siblings, or helping with work. But there are definitely ways that you can show who you are and what your extracurricular interests are, even during this time period. This is a wonderful resource that you can click on that gives a lot of great ideas for extracurricular activities that are virtual. So take a look, see if there's anything that interests you and what you might be able to get involved in over the summer. Demonstrated interest is another thing that is changing a little bit in this COVID-19 world. Demonstrated interest always has been important to colleges. They're interested in knowing how interested you are in them, because of course that helps them to figure out, if you're likely to attend if you were offered admission. But with COVID-19, colleges are offering so many virtual recruiting events. It's really important for students to take advantage of this. Number one, it sort of levels the playing field for everyone, which is fantastic. So being able to access all of these great opportunities from your living room is really, really wonderful. But also, remember that demonstrated interest in the virtual world is trackable. So it's important for you to think about being available and really showing them that you are interested in learning more about their school. So just because you might be on a Zoom college visit, please, remember that you should not be overly casual, that you need to think about asking relevant questions, that you need to be polite and genuine, and really have done a little bit of due diligence on the research for that school ahead of time. So we really encourage you to take an active interest in attending these virtual workshops and webinars that the colleges are having. Mrs. Lewis has put together a great resource on the CCC webpage that lists constantly the things that are coming out and available to students. So take a look at what she's put together and go ahead and register for what seems interesting to you. Speaking of the wonderful Mrs. Lewis, she also has put together a common application crash course. So juniors that are excited about getting prepared and organized during the summer, June 16th from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. with a lunch break, there is going to be a wonderful Zoom opportunity for you to not only understand how to do the Common App, but really to get ahead on creating your Common App account. She is going to be putting information out at the end of May as to how to register. The CCC is asking for a suggested donation of $50, but it is not mandatory to donate. It's only suggested just to help cover some of the costs associated with putting the program on. So if you're interested, check the CCC website in the next few days, and there should be some information from Mrs. Lewis, or you can always reach out to her directly via email to get the information on how to sign up for this great opportunity for your class. So in closing, juniors, we know that this is a stressful time for everyone, and then you add in all of the COVID-19 stuff, and that just kind of adds to everything else too. But what we really want you to do is remember that this is the summer for you to research your schools and to really have a solid list of where you're applying. This is a little recap of everything that we've talked about. We hope that this presentation has been helpful to you. Your counselors, of course, are here to answer any questions that you have until the last day of school, and we are available via email until the last day of school, and we really look forward to helping you with this application process in the fall. Have a great summer, everyone. Thanks for listening.